When you push that, you'll see it turn right up here, and then it's on.
Thank you.
All right. I now call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Yes, recording, right?
We're live.
Are we recording? All right. Now I call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Welcome to ANC 1E's July General Body Meeting. This is our first hybrid in-person and virtual meeting of the year. A few administrative notes. Today's meeting is being recorded. For those joining us virtually through Zoom, closed caption is available for each user by clicking the button on the toolbar below. Please submit questions through the Q&A function located on the toolbar below. If you're calling in rather than participating through the web, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. Commissioners will be keeping an eye on the Q&A throughout the evening. I'll now ask the secretary to please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Footer. Commissioner Gallagher?
Present.
Commissioner Gallagher, present, not president. Commissioner Lancaster? I do not see Commissioner Lancaster in the room or on the Zoom, so not here yet. Commissioner Ray?
Present.
Commissioner Ray is present. Commissioner Brown?
Present.
Commissioner Brown is present. Commissioner Newland?
Present.
Commissioner Newland is present. Commissioner Jacobson, that's me, I'm present. And Commissioner Footer?
Present.
All right, with 6 out of 7 seated commissioners, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Get started. All right. Great. All right, so a few administrative matters. Per DC law, the ANC 1E meeting was noticed to the community via listserv, social media, website, and e-calendar. Moving to the approval of the agenda. Tonight on the agenda, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items under the consent agenda, which I will read later. We have a community announcements where we have two special guests, and then we'll go through our regularly scheduled community announcement agenda. And we have 1, 2, 3 resolutions that we'll go through. Are there any additions or amendments to the agenda?
I'm sorry, just double checking. Was there a grant application? We're planning on handling that at this meeting?
Yes. So
Okay,
the grant is under, it's the sponsorship
Okay.
application. Yeah.
That's fine. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Right. If there are none, I'll now accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the agenda as written.
Is there any dissent? Hearing none. Motion passes and the agenda is approved. All right, moving to the consent agenda. Just a reminder, all matters listed under consent are considered by the commission to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any commissioner may, however, remove an item from the consent agenda by request. The consent agenda this evening includes approval of the June ANC meeting, approval of ANC 1E quarterly finance report for FY24 Q3, a letter of support for the 12th annual Hoop for Hope basketball tournament, Approval for the commission to purchase an account with one password in the amount of $450 and authorize the use of the ANC credit card, and approval for the commission to reimburse Commissioner Ray $38 for WordPress domain registration. Is there anything that commissioners would like to take off the consent agenda for further discussion? Or even add anything to the consent agenda? All right. Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the consent agenda as written.
Is there any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the consent agenda is approved, all items under. All right, we are moving right along. So we're moving now to community announcements. Commissioners and members of the community can use this time to make public announcements, distribute information, or alert the community about issues. We'll start with special guests, presentation from Laura McNeil and David Lipscomb, I apologize, from DDOT, and presenting on the Greater U Street Performance Parking Zone. And they'll have 5 minutes to present, then take questions from commissioners and the public. After the presentation, we'll move to commissioners, then the mayor's office of community relations and services, also known as MOCRS, and then the representative from Councilmember Brandon Doe's office, then members of the public. All speakers will have 3 minutes. So thank you for joining us. If you guys would like to step over to the podium, the floor is yours. All orders.
Oh, what's that one? That makes sense. Great. So my name is Laura McNeil. I have recently stepped into the role of Associate Director of the Curbside Management Division. Been about a month now, so I'm getting up to speed, and I'm glad to have my colleague Dave Lipscomb here, Curbside Manager, Dave Lipscomb. We are here to talk about a program that's been under development and moving into implementation. It's the Greater U Street Performance Parking Pilot Zone. Well, it's parking zone pilot officially in the legislation. So as I mentioned, this was part of, part of the Budget Support Act of 2023. This is a council mandate to implement a specific zone around U Street with the goal of increasing turnover and reducing congestion and sort of better matching curbside programming to the demands of the neighborhood. So we'll get into the specific policies in a minute, but that's why we're here, and that's what we're going to talk about. So that zone, so the pink and yellow are different land use zoning. And you can see that the concentration of dark peak is along U Street and 14th Street. And the zone is a little bit darker than the background. So it's T and U and 14th and Florida and 9th. I believe that's 9th right there. And these were designated in the law. So this is what we're going to move forward with or concentrate our efforts and have them implemented by the end of this fiscal year. So next parking, yeah. And so we did an analysis. We worked with the lab at DC. They're a data analysis collaboration that work out of the city administrator's office. And so with their support, we looked at parking transaction data and estimated occupancy based on that payment data, which is obviously incomplete. But that was a good approximation and our best approximation of curbside demand in this area over time. And they found that demand consistently started relatively low in the morning and then increased in demand through these payment transactions throughout the day, with the highest peak period being the 6 to midnight 6 p.m. to midnight time periods. And we only have, one payment sort of price in this. It's $2.30 an hour. And what you have is just a lot of people coming to the neighborhood to find parking, and the end result, frustration. So next slide. So this was an opportunity for us to, us being the curbside management division, think about ways that we could better price to reflect demand and sort of accommodate and encourage turnover. So this kind of dynamic pricing concept, higher pricing at the higher demand periods, is in line with our Move DC goals, trying to optimize curb space, trying to discourage those single occupancy vehicle trips to the neighborhood that is so transit rich, and reduce the traffic congestion and emissions that come from that. So pricing model. Just to tell you right off the bat, we are limited by regulation to $8 an hour. So while, there may be higher demand than, the equivalent of $8 in this area, that's what we're working with for the time being. So within that parameter of, $2.30, which is current rate, to $8, based on that demand that we saw, lower demand in the morning period, and then, a little bit higher in the mid-afternoon. And then that 6 p.m. mark really just was a clear break in usage. And that's when we jumped it up to $8. So backing up, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., we're proposing $3. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., we're proposing $5. 6 p.m. to midnight, we're proposing $8. We're proposing extending the metering 24/7 in this area. So moving from midnight to 7 a.m., we're proposing $5. So that's in and itself like some radical changes, 24/7 metering, and then these higher pricing ranges based on the observed demand. With that is another concept we're introducing in this area. It is residential metered parking, or pay to park within RPP. So, well, actually, I skipped ahead. We're simplifying the signage in general just to say pay to park, and trying to move people to the meters and park mobile for the exact pricing and time periods of time limitations. And we're going to try to just streamline our signs as much as possible. So it's, you have to pay, that's the expectation. And then you have to go to either park mobile, and ideally park mobile or some other mobile payment, or the meter to learn, the specifics. This is in keeping with our stadium zone pricing and other performance pricing zones. Then we're introducing the concept of, in the residential blocks immediately adjacent to the metered corridors, at least in this initial implementation, we're proposing just those RPP and ROP blocks be slightly changed in their regulations. In the RPP, it's pay to park if you don't have that RPP permit. And we intend to keep the same time limit, but the 24/7 metering, reflecting and mirroring the metered parking policy. And any resident-only blocks that are immediately adjacent or facing RPP blocks in those areas that are directly next to the metered corridors, 24/7 ROP. So that you're not encouraging people to flock to the ROP sections when, like, the enforcement period that currently is there expires. And so in keeping with that limited footprint for the initial implementation, we're going to do sort of like a watch, wait, and potentially expand or readjust. And that's the sample signage you see on the screen. And then that's sort of an illustration of the affected blocks that we're going to be introducing the 24/7 metered parking policies. So again, the existing metered blocks, the pay to park in those adjacent blocks, and then the 24/7 resident only parking in those adjacent blocks. So that's the summary, high level, of what we are planning to implement and planning to study and and adjust as needed or expand as desired for a start go date by the end of this fiscal year. I'm happy to take questions, happy to let Dave step in with more specifics. I was like, I'm here for the high level, and Dave can answer a lot of the specifics because he's been thinking about this longer. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions?
I do have questions, but you may have the same question, so I don't know if I want to steal yours.
You can go first.
Okay, can you turn back to the map that shows, it was the slide before this, just before this? No, just before the end. There we go, thank you. So if you're familiar with this ANC, we really only cover the, I'll call it the upper right corner, sort of below that park area. Yeah, thank you for the hand. So what's going on in that zone? It doesn't appear like there's anything going on in that zone, but can you tell us about that?
You want to speak to that? Or you want to
I
go
can
about it?
talk to it a little bit. So in terms of the project area that we're working with here, that was based on the transaction data that we provided to the lab. I think there were some other data that was used to try to extrapolate occupancy. I think to give a very precise answer, I don't think we have the data to support that so much as the analysis that we got from the lab shows this halo effect around U Street, which I think is sort of intuitive for all of us who live here. I live 13th and S. And so the legislation does give us some freedom to change the zone or add other areas or subtract them perhaps if necessary. So I think that's something that we want to look at in the implementation process once we see this project start to operate and how it impacts occupancy, transactions, and things like that. I feel like that's a very roundabout answer to say what I said more concisely with the halo effect. We are using some subjective judgment here to determine where activity is happening in this proximity to especially the U Street corridor and a bit of the 14th Street corridor. Your input will be valuable in helping us understand if we're in the right place, if we need to make other adjustments. But I think this is very consistent with our practice to look at the context of the neighborhood, basically land use and the types of businesses and other activities that we're seeing and respond to that. It is a bit what we hope is intuitive, but we will see in the implementation how that bears out.
Thanks, that's all I had.
Commissioner?
Thanks, Chair Footer, and thank you all for being here tonight. I guess, what does that input process look like if, I live, you can see Banneker on that screen there. Sherman ends up being filled with people who are driving in at night to go out on U Street and end up getting a lot of trash from people cleaning out their cars after night on U Streets. So I'm just curious, like, if we ever wanted to expand the zone, how should we give you that feedback? Because there isn't any sort of paid parking there on Sherman right now.
Yeah. So I think we love getting letters, resolutions, things directly and officially from the ANC. It gives us the confidence that the neighborhood is being represented through its official channel. I think, we've done work with this ANC and, every other in the district. Sometimes it's just sending that email when you are starting to notice trends. If you've got video, still photos, just basic information, you can always send it to our team. And that is helpful along the way. If you get to a point where you feel like there's critical mass in terms of evidence, that's compelling to make some adjustment. Again, letter or ANC resolution is very helpful. Again, because we get that official formal written communication.
And I guess one other question related to that, is it possible to have different rates depending on the area, or say like, that Sherman area I think is fine most of the time, but it gets super crowded late at night. So charge the full rate at night and not charge the rest of the day or something like that, or?
Yeah, I don't want to overcommit.
That's fair.
Which might be surprising. You might be surprised to hear me say that. But I do want to say that If you all are familiar with the dynamic pricing pilot that we did in Chinatown several years ago, right? That is something that's very much on our radar. We want to be making data-based decisions for how we implement these policies. There is a tension between that and customer experience and ensuring that people are receiving the correct information and don't have expectations that are contrary to that. So it's definitely not a no, that's not an off the table thing. It's actually something I think we'd like to explore in the future. And it's something that we are just thinking about more globally across the district in terms of the way that we manage parking policy. Right now, I think we have a very sort of clear direction that we want to go, and then use that as the basis for understanding the logistics of communicating information, how people understand it, how they react to it, their compliance, coordination for enforcement reasons and all that. All of those things impact sort of what we decide to do ultimately. So short answer, maybe.
Other questions? Okay, I have a number of questions. So I guess kind of building off what Commissioner was just talking about. So can you walk us through a little bit what you mean by enforcement and how it's different from the current enforcement protocols?
I don't believe there would be a different enforcement protocol. If, you know, typically we only have enforcement between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. I think this ANC's probably worked with Mayor's Office on nightlife and culture. And so there is the Nightlife Task Force, which operates after 10 p.m. I believe they operate until 3 a.m. Or shortly thereafter. And so there would not be a change in the protocol in the way that they enforce. They would, you know, look on each block, see what the programming is. If it's a pay to park block that has that park mobile sign or as, you know, meter, they're going to check for an active parking session, just as they would any other area. If it was a 2-hour zone or it was our short-term parking that we have at 14th and U, determine whether that vehicle's in compliance and then write a citation if appropriate. And then certainly any other violations they have, they could receive citations for that. But it's essentially the same, but we work with DPW very closely and DMV especially. We have a monthly coordination meeting with them. So these are the things that we're communicating to them regularly, so that officers are aware if they see a new sign configuration, not to worry, you can follow your regular protocol.
Mm-hmm. I think that's maybe some of the community's concern right there is that DPW has been very articulate in that they're under-resourced and they're unable to actually do this effectively across the entire city. And so is there any kind of prioritization that happens with these kind of program areas, or at least in the pilot program? And let me get straight to the point. I think that the community is concerned that there's going to be a lot of parking that's going to flush out into the neighborhoods. Commissioner just expressed that he experiences that and he's outside of that zone. And so there are a number of streets in here that are very residential that are not necessarily going to have increased rates, but you know, effectively people are going to just find other areas where they can park. So I guess like, what is the mitigation strategy around that? What are you doing to actually collect data to make data-driven decisions to help kind of tell that story more effectively?
Yeah, I think that's built into our coordination with DPW. So again, it's something that we've been communicating with them about continually through the planning process. In terms of the data, we regularly request data, and particularly when we're running pilots, right? We are coordinating to get that data on a regular basis. And typically, you know, we try to get it before it's available to the public. Open Data DC has some redacted citation data, but there's typically, I think, about a 2-month lag. These are things that we'll be asking for throughout the process just to keep our finger on the pulse, as it were. I think, as we see that implementation roll out, we will be communicating everything we can to them. We do try to make them aware of what we see as priority programs, but they are certainly their own agency and have their own priorities. But I do think that the Nightlife Task Force is going to be very beneficial in this, because I think if I just had to guess, I think some of the areas where we are likely to see the most offenses are areas that are regularly patrolled by DPW under that program.
And you mentioned kind of at the very beginning that, you know, the data is very limited already. Are we going to increase the capabilities collecting better data?
That's something that we are continually been working on for many years. We have at times been able to deploy different resources during the pandemic. I probably talked to this ANC about our pickup drop-off zones. We got traffic control officers who worked for 15 months to collect that kind of data. We're always exploring those kinds of opportunities. In a longer term strategy, we have some higher level ideas about how we think we might be able to automate enforcement or data collection. That's still in the planning stages, but it's something that is becoming a lot more accessible within the market of, you know, what various vendors offer. We have done testing previously with 2 different automated enforcement companies. So we are in the data gathering process to figure out what's actually going to be useful for us. We have some very unique challenges as the district, and just being a jurisdiction with a lot of heavy concentration of commercial activity. I think some of the products and services that are available aren't always well tailored to the curbside environment. They're much more garage and lot kind of management, but we're seeing that change. So our mid to long-term vision is to try to incorporate perhaps technological solutions. Maybe there are human resources that we can add to this, but there's nothing sort of specifically at this moment in that plan.
Okay. So if we were to talk to the community about how they can try to help articulate, give data around the impacts to their community, is it 311 calls? You mentioned photos earlier, ANC resolutions, but those kind of take a little bit of time. Like, what's an immediate effective way to just throw data at you?
Yeah, I mean, 311 is always at your service. And for all the time that I've been at DDOT, I say, when you see the offense or you see the issue, if it is something that's appropriate to request through 311, you can request parking enforcement through 311. I recommend, making that request. Sometimes it just becomes so overwhelming. You're like, I see this problem so much, I just don't want to have to open up the app or call them every single time. I think when you're starting to get to that point, that's a good time to start sending us, an email, give us a call. Again, the more that you can document, and especially if they're just peculiar problems, right? We've seen, I think, on-demand delivery service has created a lot of very peculiar problems where the hottest restaurant is in the hardest place to reach. And then you've got a double, triple parking, that sort of thing. It's great for you to notify us about that, but when you have pictures of every time it happens, it helps us conceptualize the problem a lot better.
How long is the pilot? You said you'd like to actually implement it by the end of the year. So how long is the pilot going to be?
I'm not sure about the.
So when we talk to Councilmember Nadeau, they don't know how the word pilot got in there. It wasn't intended for it to be a pilot according to them. So there isn't a time frame on it. I think it's really like a understand and then make decisions based on that. So there isn't a clear deadline, but certainly based on how it rolls out, how we feel it's going, there's an opportunity to readjust in whatever direction we think is most appropriate, or with consensus I think is most appropriate.
So I kind of want to go off that for just a moment. So when council member was talking about this program, and one of the reasons why I was quite passionate about it was that it was modeled after what was going on around the ballpark as an opportunity to collect funds to try and start a bid or SID, some sort of business improvement area in this corridor. And so do you know roughly like how much money you guys anticipate based on your data? How much money do you guys anticipate this is going to generate?
Not yet. We will get, we haven't done the calculations to a degree that we feel like we have confidence. So we're working on that, and we can circle back to you with our best estimate once we've kind of completed that exercise. But it's a combination of like, first, the legislation is, it's what might go to like a special revenue fund is the increased revenue from the base level that's today. So first we have to sort of, that base level still is going to go to WMATA. And then the rest of that sort of, extra revenue that's collected, that's what's going to be sort of directed into the special revenue fund. And the immediate sort of needs for that would be just the signage, the implementation, and the maintenance of pulling it off and implementing it. So, you know, I think we'll have a better answer for you in the coming weeks, maybe in the coming months about what that might look like in terms of scope and where that might be, you know, used once we have a better idea of what our, you know, our costs are.
And for in your studies, did you guys have any kind of projected traffic pattern studies and how this is going to change any of that traffic?
Well, with the increased turnover that we're hoping to see from these changed meter prices, we're hoping to see less cruising for parking and less congestion as a result. So that's our hope, and we're going to be keeping monitoring that and maybe, you know, adjust from there.
And I'm sorry, pardon my ignorance, but the basic concept is that you make it more expensive and people don't want to pay that, so they're just getting out of there quicker.
Yeah.
And is that true?
I mean, yeah, if you're price sensitive, then you're like, well, I'm gonna not just like park here forever, or maybe I'll consider the bus, or maybe I'll, you know, go to the garage, which wasn't as good of a, you know, which was way less of a good deal when you had $2.30 an hour pricing on the street. So it changes the calculations for sure.
Do you,
And I'm hoping that with the nightlife and this increased sort of enforcement pressure on this neighborhood, that there will be better compliance just in general to pay the parking, first of all, and to stay within the time limit.
and what's the elasticity of the public in this kind of pricing model? Is it, are we expecting it to actually, people to actually do that behavior?
It's a range. I think we're gonna see a range. I think that and we're gonna sort of see this bears out, that there are gonna be some people who are like, that's fine. You know, but then other people are going, that's a problem. So I'm gonna change my behavior. I think you're gonna see a mix of customers, and I think it may change by day of the week and by time period as well.
If I can just sort of
Please.
add to that, based on what we saw in the Chinatown pilot, where we had dynamic pricing and prices were changed incrementally based on the demand. We were able to see some very clear patterns where I think we had set a floor of $1 for that. So there were zones that went down to $1 and were, you know, predictably farther away from sort of your main attractions. And then we got as high as $8. Obviously, that's our ceiling. So that's something that we can't do. So we can't go over that. So we will do our best to sort of determine, you know, what that elasticity is, but recognize we do have a cap. And the reality is we could be at a point where that cap isn't quite high enough. But we do think it will influence behavior just because of the order of magnitude that we're seeing at our peak price.
And I'll make this kind of one of my last questions because I know I'm taking a little time. Have we looked at any kind of crime impacts? One would think that people are going to be able to afford this, that it's probably going to increase people with a lot more disposable income. Is it going to, have you guys done any kind of research? Have you seen anywhere else where it invites people who would maybe target cars of a higher quality, things of that nature? It's okay if the answer is no. Maybe it's something to go back.
But yeah, my first reaction is that I don't see it fundamentally changing the customer base of U Street. So like you have U Street, and that's going to be the determining factor who's going to go to U Street, not the pricing of the parking. It may change how people get there or how long they stay there, but I don't think it's fundamentally going to like change who's going to be there.
Yeah, and you know, we deal with safety. DDOT is not a public safety agency per se. Obviously, we have great relationship with MPD. And so again, feedback that's helpful and anything that you observe or your conversations with them. And again, we continue to coordinate with all of our partners. You know, if you can make us aware of it, you know, it's something that we can
Help address.
try to
Yeah.
address, even if it's
And-
not through us necessarily.
I bring it up because I live, or the question that the commissioner first started with is, it's my district that is impacted by the zone. I'm in the zone right here. It's my district. And we just have a lot of car break-ins over there. The lighting is really bad. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but we have a very, very high rate of car break-ins. And it begs the question of just making sure that we're not kind of making the situation worse. I agree. I don't think it'll change the dynamic of people who are coming, but it may change the physicality of what cars are actually staying. And so if it is all of a sudden all these Mercedes that are there, is it just going to be like a high target area for more break-ins where it's already bad? You know what I mean? So it's worth at least taking a look at or seeing if there's any data that can, hopefully prove that wrong. But it's at least a question that I know the community would be concerned with.
Thanks. No, thanks for putting that on our radar.
Yeah. I guess final question. I'm sorry, guys. The area that's in this entire block. So if the funds are kind of dedicated to supporting everything in this fund, or in this area,
So, yeah.
but it's in the zone, thank you. But it's not contributing per se. Like, how are those funds gonna help everything in the zone? Or we haven't gotten there yet?
First, I think the first step is like recouping and understanding the investments needing to pull this off. And implement this, and sort of make sure that the signage is consistent and clear and like, in place and the meters are upgraded and we have these policies, well executed. And then I think at that, that's going to be the work that we're concentrating on right now. And I think once we have some of those main things in place and we, turn the lights on, for lack of a better expression, then I think we can kind of start planning for that future of what is that, what are those real costs, what is the revenue that we're getting, and then I think it's a discussion with the community and certainly we'll make those decisions in a collaborative fashion.
Great. Commissioners, any other questions before I go to the community? All right. We do have somebody on the line, Commissioner Frank Chauvin. If we could bring him up.
Good
Commissioner
evening.
Chauvin should be able to speak now.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners, and good evening, DDOT. I appreciate this. This is definitely a step forward for the neighborhood and long overdue. I have two major concerns. One, the partner, DPW, and enforcement. This program means nothing, all your hours, if we don't have proper enforcement. If you aren't working in partnership every step of the way, this is a waste of funds. We're not getting enforcement now. It should be a concomitant effort where there's this integral partnership so that the community can have enforcement and this program can succeed. And right now, nobody I know has faith that that's going to happen. And so I'd ask that what more can you do to ensure DPW is an equal partner in this project and reporting so that we have enough human resources to undertake enforcement. I one more comment, and then I'll hold back for an answer on both of these, if you would. My second one has to do with, I am not convinced about the study and the data with respect to how residential streets will fare. I live in an RPP zone, a few blocks off of U Street, and my neighbors aren't included. My block is included in the RPP. Sorry, in the paved program here. I live on 9th Street. It's the dotted line to the bottom right, blue and purple. Down to the bottom, it's 9th, go to the right there, down, yep, that's my street. Everything to the left of me, there's about 400 row homes. And currently, all of these streets are unprotected. There's no enforcement. There is bumper-to-bumper traffic on Fridays and Saturdays, often Sundays. And I just do not feel, and I'm not convinced, I haven't seen the data, that real analysis has been undertaken to ensure that residential neighborhoods are protected. I believe in order to protect many residential neighborhoods in this program, that parking performance rates have to be charged, or this program is useless and will not be protecting the neighborhoods and the residences in them. And my 5 blocks to the west or to the left of your hand on the map are not the only residential blocks in this whole configuration in this U Street performance zone. There's 20, 30 blocks that are residential blocks. And I'd like to see more data to show why they weren't included and how we will not be a rampage for cheap parking and worsening parking conditions. Because I think in all reality, most people think that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to be the butt of this program in front of our homes with no enforcement and no increased parking rates. Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you for sharing your concerns. We understand that DPW is a valued partner in this, and we are regularly meeting with them and communicating what we're doing and how the enforcement might work. We're also working with DPW. I don't think that license plate readers are something that DPW has procured and is rolling out. And I think that that will be an instrumental benefit and improvement on their enforcement capabilities. So we're looking forward to working with them and expanding on that and introducing that in these residential areas to help enforce against what your concerns are. This immediately adjacent rollout of residential or metered payment in residential areas is exactly what it is. It's the initial implementation phase that we will implement and evaluate and adjust and potentially expand based on our observations and how it's going. And the observations come from the data, come from observations that residents make, that we make, and are subject to change, like the implementation plan as a result. So I very much hear your concerns about DPW, and we are actively fostering a relationship with them for these shared goals. So stay tuned. We will continue to work on this, and we'll be looking forward to hearing from you how it's going along the way.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from community members? If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand. I see a couple of people who are calling in rather than joining online. If you would like to raise your hand, feel free to dial *9.
You went down. Oh, okay.
I do have, I'm sorry, a follow-up. It struck me. So how would construction permits work on these blocks? If I had a project that was going to take up, 6 spaces for 6 months on a block that you've now designated as either, paid or not paid, how am I affected in that? Is it still the same price?
Applying logic to that, yes. But we would have to, have those conversations to ensure that that makes its way through the system. Like if you're a resident, you have a residential parking permit, I don't, off the cuff, I would say that makes sense that you would maintain the same parking privileges as you do now.
Yeah.
Including occupancy permits.
I mean, it may be something to think about though,
Yeah.
in terms of, because a lot of this is not so much neighbors doing these things as it is developers doing these things. And they are the ones who tend to, let's say, take up a number of spaces for longer than maybe they need. And now, if it's a performance-based area, it's clearly a higher priority need. So if there's nothing in the legislation that allows you to look at that might be something that the council could look at in the future as a amendment.
Well, certainly it's an idea that we, a learning exercise. So yeah, we'll take it into consideration and think about it and maybe propose something based on more considered thought.
Great. Any other questions from commissioners or members of the public? Right, seeing none. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Really appreciate you guys presenting on all this. And I know you guys are going to ANC 1B tomorrow. Oh, great. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Could you hit that button?
Yes. Yes.
All right, I am pulling the agenda back up. Great. So we are back to community announcements. Commissioners, any announcements? Yes.
I do have an announcement. I'm sorry. There is a cleanup. ANC 1A and District Bridges have been getting together. I'm sorry, I'm probably stealing something from Phil. Let's- in 1E, was that say 1E? 1E and District Bridges is doing a cleanup. I believe it is this weekend, but let me just double check because I just got the email reminding me. It is Saturday, August 3rd. They will be meeting at 10 o'clock. And where are they meeting? Irving in Georgia. There you go. Sorry. Hey, I shouldn't have been the one to do this, but thank you.
Any other announcements, commissioners? Yeah, please.
There will be a second cleanup
Ooh.
on August 17th at 10 a.m. at Irving and Warder. So we're trying to do 2 cleanups a month, one through District Bridges, the other one basically led by 1E. So the 3rd and the 17th, both at 10 a.m. More to come.
Nice. I have one. We will have a agency walkthrough of Casey Lewis Fields on August 6th. Right now we have DPR, was just talking to DDOT and DC Water, who are all joining us, and Councilmember Nadeau's office. But there was the funds that were allocated in the budget for the playground. And we have a laundry list of things that were part of all of that. So we're going to walk through and talk through what the next steps are. All right. If there are no other announcements from commissioners, we will move to the mayor's office for community relations and services, MOKers, Portia Foreman. Let's see if Portia is with us this evening. I do not see Portia. So we will move to Estelle McKinney.
Anthony raised his hand.
Oh, Anthony. All right. Anthony, if we can pull Anthony up.
Anthony should be able to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
How y'all doing? I'm having some technical difficulties trying to get into the meeting. I thank you, Commissioner Brown, for helping me out. Can y'all hear me?
Yep. Thank you for joining us. Do you have an announcement from the MOKers office?
I do. First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Anthony Robertson, the new Ward 1 Community Relations Manager. And we do have just a little slight updates about, as y'all already know about the cleaning. We joined in with the cleanup this weekend, and we look forward to joining all the future cleanups that's coming up. I think you said it's one this weekend, because I had it for the first weekend. I thought it was the first weekend of the month, and the first Saturday and the third Saturday. But you said it's another one this weekend?
No, sorry, that was incorrect. It's on you were correct, Anthony. It's going to be on the first weekend of August. So
Okay. I will change. I'm about to change my calendar. And with that, I just wanted to let the community know that this some little numbers updates as far as the crime. We have crime statistics that crime is down 33%, and as far as violent crimes, and 48%. As far as carjackings compared to last year this time. And this is basically just, I'm just introducing myself, and that's really what I have for the mayor's office. And if anyone needs to reach out, I don't even know if I can drop my information in the chat, but I'm Anthony Robertson with the Community Relations Service, MOKers. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Yes, if you don't mind, put your information in the chat and we'll make sure we put it in the public forum so everybody can see it.
I don't think it's letting me do it. It says that the chat has been.
Go ahead and put it in like a Q&A and we'll take it
Okay.
and put it in. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see everyone. Good to see you, Commissioner Brown. Like I said, thank you again. She helped me
Yeah.
get on, helped me get in here.
Oh, good. But don't go anywhere. Real quick, I'm going to ask if any commissioners have any questions. Commissioners, questions? Smokers? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Anthony. Looking
Well,
forward to working with you.
No problem. Well, I'm gonna be here. I want to listen and learn some things. I'm new.
Great. All right. We'll move next to Estelle McKinney with Councilmember Nadeau's office.
Estelle should be able to speak.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Estelle from Councilmember Nadeau's office, Constituent Services Specialist. Nice to meet you, Anthony. Excited to work with you. And also thank you so much for the DDOT reps for the presentation on the U Street Performance Parking Zone. I have a few legislative and policy updates. So earlier this month, Councilmember Nadeau sent a letter to the city administrator and Office of the Unified Communications, which is the 911 call center, regarding persistent mismanagement of emergencies and lack of transparency regarding the call history and response times. And so this letter documented history of making critical errors, including dispatching EMS to the wrong address, misdirecting calls, failing to prioritize emergencies, and simply not answering 911 calls, which is very, very concerning. Council members cite several incidents in Ward 1 in a short period of time, and Ward 1 residents have reported additional incidents to her. So in this letter, council member requested daily staffing statistics for the past 2 years and an updated list and number of agency mistakes from April to June, and a briefing on plan changes with the city administrator in the next coming month. And you can read that letter on Councilmember Nadeau's website. Happy to also drop that in the Q&A. And then next, there are a couple of bills to protect DC's vibrant musical and cultural history, as well as guard against excessive amplified sound, which I know I've heard from multiple constituents regarding some just excessive sound going on. And so Councilmember Nadeau's committee took up a bill from Chairman Mendelson called the Amplified Sound Mitigation Act. And this would address resident and business concerns about amplified public performances. The goal of this bill, as well as a companion bill, which the council member introduced called the Harmonious Living Amendment Act, is to protect the vibrant musical and cultural history of neighborhoods while also giving relief to the residents who have lived or moved here, reasonable protections from excessive sound. And this bill will have a hearing later next legislative session. Lastly, DDOT is kicking off a Columbia Heights bus priority project, and it's just starting for and it calls for public feedback, which I will drop in the Q&A as well. And this looks at safety and bus transit operations in several Ward 1 corridors and touches on a few intersections in ANC 1E. So I think this would all be very useful for you all to look at and also share feedback. And so the objectives of this project haven't been determined yet because they're still in the concept phase, and it will be largely based on what the feedback is and concerns are from folks and residents themselves. So I know, let me drop all that in. And that is it for me. Okay.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for Estelle? Right. Hearing none. Thank you, Estelle. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all so much. Okay.
All right.
Everything needed. Let me know. Thank you all so much. Yep.
Thank you. All right. And next we will move to members of the public. If you are joining us this evening and have an announcement that you would like to share with the community, please raise your hand. Again, I see a couple of people who are joining us via phone. You can dial *9 to raise your hand. All right, I see we have a comment from Commissioner Chauvin.
Commissioner Chauvin should be able to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening, and thank you again for recognizing me. I just would like to just put out there for folks who may or may not be familiar with the T Street Task Force that has been enacted by the mayor about 2 years ago to help review and make some changes with the goings on per se at 7th and T Northwest. HIPS, which is a harm reduction program, started a contract there about 3 months ago. And this committee, sort of a task force, has been meeting once a month, first Thursdays. And I am soliciting some help from folks throughout the community who might have an interest in community development, harm reduction, behavioral health. I am just putting it out there. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'd like to get a letter to DBH and DOH to ensure that they're doing everything they can at this corner, because I'm not really sure what they are or aren't doing. And so I want to ensure that that we bring all of their services and uses, availabilities, and programs to that corner. And I just am trying to solicit more help from folks who have an interest in turning things around here, making it safer, getting folks help that they need, etc. So anyway, engaging folks, whether they want to potentially commit to a committee meeting once a month here at the a task force, on the task force, I can get that information, and or just do some work on the backside with DBH and DOH, which I'm unfamiliar with generally, and will having to be learn more with you folks, anybody that's interested in contributing to a solution there. So love to hear from anyone who might be interested in learning more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? Right. Seeing none, we will move to official business. Official business has been organized into our 3 standing committees. The committee chairs will begin by providing a brief update on their committee's activities from July. Then we will walk through each item of business, and the commissioners will have 5 minutes per item to present. They'll take questions from commissioners and then the audience members. I will start with Transportation and Public Space Committee, Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Chair Footer, and I have a resolution to present. While you're pulling that up, I do want to note that Open Streets for 7th Street was announced. It does not appear that there will be a Georgia Avenue Open Streets this year, unfortunately, though. So I think the 7th Avenue or the 7th Street one is in October, the first weekend of October, but we'll make an announcement of that on a later date. So this resolution is around improved parking enforcement on the 700 block of Gresham Place Northwest. This is something that I've been communicating with Commissioner Newland as chair of Public Safety Committee and Public Safety and Community Engagement, and with one of his constituents, since this is his SMD. One of his constituents came to the Transportation Committee meeting to talk through some of the challenges that he's had getting DPW, the Parking Enforcement Management Agency, to come and actually enforce some of the parking laws on that street. And I noticed that there's a typo. If we could correct that, everyone's probably seeing it. So there have been a number of instances where there are vehicles parked in front of crosswalks, in crosswalks, in front of fire hydrants. There is a resident with disabilities that has a parking spot in front of their home. And so there's been a lot of vehicles parking illegally on the street. In the past, when DPW has done enforcement, they have been threatened by some of the people who are illegally parking. So at some point, DPW decided that they would no longer enforced in this area and that residents needed to reach out to MPD. When residents have reached out to MPD, MPD has said this is something that DPW should be doing, and we're happy to partner with them when they're going to be doing enforcement on that block. They just need to reach out to us, and we're happy to accompany them on those patrols. So there's just a lot of back and forth here, and this is something in DPW's jurisdiction, and it's something that MPD is willing to provide an officer for. It's just a matter of getting DPW to acknowledge this. The constituent has presented at council oversight hearings and has sent a lot of letters to Pima, but is having issues. And so he asked that we pass a resolution as an ANC. And, given that folks parking legally and not blocking fire hydrants and not blocking crosswalks is important, I figured we could bring this in front of the body. So the last piece in the resolution is just asking Pima to collaborate with MPD for parking enforcement rather than just telling residents to redirect it to MPD when they submit 311 requests, and asking that Pima share information with our ANC as to which areas in the district are deemed high risk. Any questions or comments from my fellow commissioners?
Question. Would it be worth maybe also adding in here for Office of Communications to try and route 311 requests of this nature to MPD instead of like doing a direct route rather than having Pima do it, like send it to both of them?
I would be fine with that, but it does seem like Pima's responsibility at the end of the day, and that MPD is there to provide like safety protection.
So you want them to actually take the initiative to control the entire situation, even though they've already demonstrated that they don't?
I mean, I think it's fine to add in that piece for OUC. I just think it'll come into the same issue where MPD's just saying, why doesn't DPW reach out to us?
Do you think they would maybe instigate a conversation?
Maybe. We can see, we can throw it in there.
I mean,
so what's the language? That OUC direct requests for parking enforcement on this block to both MPD and Pima. Any other comments while Chair Footer is typing that up?
Can I ask a small clarifying question? The next bullet after the one that Chair Footer is working on, is it areas within ANC 1E that we're interested in there?
I'm curious about the entire district, so there's no reason to scope our request just to 1E, because at some point, maybe this is a good oversight function to share with the council.
Fantastic.
I assume you're in favor. Okay, cool. Anyone else?
Mine's more just a comment because I did do, and I know Commissioner Gallagher was there as well. We did a walkthrough with MPD. I think what did they call them? Multi-agency events, but it might not be a bad thing to get everybody there one day to really kind of walk the block and do one of those full on. And this is something that usually gets coordinated through the commander, I think, but it just might be an idea. Like to sort of kick off this newfound coordination between DPW and MPD, they all come, they bring the tow trucks, people scatter, they scatter. So, I mean, it's a short-lived event, but it might help kick things off. I'm not saying it needs to be in your resolution. You just might want to talk through it. Thanks.
Yeah, I highly second Commissioner Ray's comment on that. I think since we had that public safety walk in my district that was about a year ago, last summer, right? There's been a huge improvement, sustained improvement on that block, whereas the 700 block of Gresham in question has been problematic for at minimum 15 years. It's more than parking enforcement that block suffers from.
You want to add in here's doesn't hurt.
I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to put that in the resolution because it sounds like we can just talk to the commander about it. So yeah.
Commissioner Ray and I resolve to recommend to Commissioner Jacobson that he follow this this model, but yeah, not for this resolution.
All right, any other questions? None. For members of the public, if you have a question with respect to the resolution at hand, please raise your hand, and I will call you in the order in which we receive them. Right, seeing none. If there are no other questions from commissioners, I'll now accept a motion to adopt the resolution.
I make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the resolution as now written.
Any dissent? Right, hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted.
And our next meeting is on, I believe, September 4th. It's in the agenda and on our calendar on our website. And confirming it is Wednesday, September 4th at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to Zoning and Economic Development Committee with Commissioner Ray.
Thank you, Chairman Footer. The ZED did have a meeting this month and we reviewed a case for 745 Harvard Street. So I'll get to that in a moment. No, I think I'll go to that first and then I've got one other thing that's not on the agenda specifically. 745 is a single family row house on a relatively small lot and they want to add an addition. The addition will take up an area which is currently covered by their rear porch. So, and it is a 2-story row house, as I think I said, and this addition would be 2 stories. So they are basically taking a porch and turning it into an addition that currently matches the size of the home. So it's a fairly modest change. The committee reviewed this and spoke to the homeowner who will continue to live there. He has spoken to his neighbors and had them sign off on a informational document that says that they're aware that this is happening and that they've been spoken to. So his immediate neighbors are eminently aware. And ultimately, there really weren't any concerns. You know, normally we look at light and shadow and privacy issues, but since the addition is in the same place as the current porch and is only as tall as the current home, then none of those things really should be particularly impacted. So we're recommending approval for the 2 areas of relief. And those 2 areas are required because it's on a small lot. The porch already creates a situation where you are over the lot occupancy and you are in the rear yard. And so even though you are only continuing that existing condition, you still have to go through the BZA in order to get approval. So we are recommending that the BZA approve those 2 things. Any questions?
Right, hearing none. Now go to the public. If there are any questions with respect to the case number 21154, please raise your hand and we will call on you in the order that we receive them. All right, seeing none. If there are no other questions from commissioners, then I'll now accept a motion to approve the exact name on the resolution. Sorry, the motion to resolution in support of BZA case number 21154.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
Is there any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted.
The only other item that I wanted to bring up, it's not, it was not part of the agenda of the committee, but Baldwin House, if anyone is familiar with this, is a home along Sherman Avenue, adjacent to Commissioner Jacobson's SMD. That Sherman Avenue is a border with one, at that point, I think it's one, yeah, but
B03.
B. Okay, thank you. It's adjacent to 1B. So it's in 1B, but because it's on the border, we are technically also a party to those BZA cases. They failed to do a notice to the ANC, and so they're being required to have effectively, I think they've now done that in the way that they sent an email. I think we all may have gotten an email talking about Baldwin House. So they've met that requirement. They're going to have a meeting now with the BZA sometime, I think, in September. And we are able to weigh in on that. But at the same time, it's in 1B and they can take the lead. So I think if anything, perhaps in the future, we can do a letter that says that we're aware of the case and 1B is more than available to hear from the community. So if there are community members that are interested in what's going on at the Baldwin House, and again, it's not a particularly big BZA case. I will tell you, I've looked at it myself. They're really only changing the interiors to have more residential spaces. I believe there were some office spaces on the first floor and the basement areas that will be converted into residential. So it's not anything that I believe is going to change the outward appearance of that building. But if you are, nearby and you have an interest in this, then reach out to 1B because it's really more in their area. But happy to help anyone that's interested in it to get connected. So that's it.
All right. And do you want to just announce when your next meeting is?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. And I'm looking at the thing to remind myself of the date. The next meeting is September 11th at 7 p.m. I don't know of any particular cases, but we'll keep it on the agenda in case there are any presentations that need to get made. If there are zoning cases that might come down the pike that people should give presentations on, we're happy to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. And next we'll move to Public Safety and Engagement Committee with Commissioner Newland.
Thank you, Chair Footer. The one item I have from our committee this past month is a sponsorship application for us to consider. It is from the Hoops for All nonprofit organization. They're holding their annual event to support cancer awareness called Hoops for Hope. If folks remember, we did sponsor this last year, and it was actually held at a different location because it ended up raining. So it was an indoor gym. But anyways, this year it's supposed to be at Banneker outside, and they do a basketball tournament. Again, it's to raise awareness around cancer and the I guess the benefits for the community, because those have to be specifically kind of laid out, is that it is, a large kind of social event that can be attended by the community, but the more specific benefits for the community are that they will be offering free health screenings. So that's a very nice thing that people can take advantage of. And then also, if we do end up sponsoring this, the ANC can have a table at the event and engage with constituents and folks just in and around the community. So the amount that they're requesting is, I have a different note, $500.
This may have been my error. I apologize.
Okay, it's 1,800.
1,800.
Okay. That's what I have in the most recent application, and they have shared it with the OANC as well. So this is kind of the last step is for us to approve this piece. But yeah, happy to answer any questions about the organization, the event. Open to any questions from commissioners. Yes.
It's not so much a question. I'll just make some statements as the treasurer. One, $1,800, we certainly have enough money in our accounts to cover that, so that won't be a problem. The Office of the ANC did review the application, and they were in support that it meets the criteria that are needed to do a grant application. It will require receipts at the end, so after the event, we will need to make sure we get those. But I have no reason for us not to support it. Happy that it's at Banneker, and double check that we have that number also on the minutes in the agenda, but that will become the minutes. So thank you.
I've spoken with this group a lot since this is usually in my SMD, assuming it doesn't rain. And it's a very well attended event by the community. And so this is a good opportunity for the community to learn more about ANC 1E as well. And we already have the invoice, assuming this goes through, and it's for bleacher rentals to help people stay longer.
Great. Any other questions, comments? All right, I will go to the public. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. If there are no other questions from commissioners, then I'll accept a motion to approve the resolution.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we approve the resolution as written.
Is there any dissent? Right, hearing none, resolution is approved. Go back to the agenda. Right, Commissioner.
Sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
just make sure we change the agenda,
Yes.
the amount. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And yeah, just a reminder that event is August 31st. So looking forward to seeing folks there. And our next committee meeting for public safety and engagement is going to be Monday, September 9th at 7 p.m. The actual agenda will be on our website once we get closer to the date. Thanks.
Right, well, that concludes our official business. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Everything, the Q&As clear? Just making sure.
I haven't had access to it. Have you been monitoring it?
There was one item there.
Yes, I'm following up with Stella on that offline, actually.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, if there's no other official business, then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion with unanimous consent that we adjourn the meeting.
All right, is there any dissent? Yeah. All right, with no dissent, the motion passes. We are adjourned. Before we end, very quickly, just a quick note that ANC 1E will not have a general public meeting in August. Therefore, the next general meeting of ANC 1E is scheduled for Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Announcements and other information about ANC 1E are available at anc1e.org. As always, please feel free to contact any commissioner with any questions. And with that, thank you very much for your time this evening, and we will see you soon.